In the middle of turn one, the back end jumps out, and, you know, they slam the outside wall.
And I take back what I said about doesn't appear to be very much damage, because obviously I couldn't see the left side, and he tore up the left side of that car pretty good.
Well, again, fortunately, they were hit with the left rear suspension. Again, that absorbs a lot of
motion, right? Just about the same way that Beechler crashed earlier today.
Very similar. Hits the left rear first, absorbs most of the energy. You can see the debris. The tires are tethered to try to help protect spectators and surrounding cars and vehicles, and so you know, all the systems did their job, and fortunately Danny's all right.
Yeah, that's the good news. Danny again did get out of the car under his own power, but we are under a caution once again.
Very hard. His
situation is that they've got to get another car ready now, and that squeezes them. We see him into the wall there. He's still carrying a lot of energy down the straightaway here, into the wall, jumps in the air, spins around, so he did a lot of damage to that car. They've got to get another one out.
They do have a backup car. Hopefully we'll see Donnie Beechler on the track before he was involved in a crash. Was knocked out.
But we know that someday down the road, Tice Carlson will race again at Indianapolis.
That race was just incredible. Watch to show the folks at home there you are earlier today riding around the racetrack, and although there had been some rain, the people that were here were just yelling and screaming and chanting. That had to make you feel awfully good, knowing that people are never ever going to forget Rick Mears.
Well, that's one of the main things about here at Indianapolis. The people here are definitely real race fans, and they remember everything, and it's really a real warm feeling.
We saw some of the highlights of your 4 wins. Does one stand out in your mind over the others as maybe being the most special? I know they're all special, but one that really you will always remember?
Well, the first one, obviously the first one. It has its own place, but to me, the real special one was the 4th one. You know, never having dreamed of going to Indy to begin with, let alone win it, and then to be able to win it 4 times was a fantastic feeling. But then also the way the race played out, with Michael and I having a shootout at the end and swapping places back and forth, it was really...
Company, Paul Batlovich and Chuck Buck,
going to put it back together. And earlier today, rookie Sam Hornish Jr. went back on the racetrack, and Sam, it was sort of a shakeout lap. The car seemed to be back in order. Everything okay?
Everything was real good with the car. All we got to do this morning is go out, make sure everything was put back together right, and nothing was going to fall off the car, and went out. And as soon as we came around the first lap out of the pits to try to go for a little bit of speed, it went yellow for rain, so a little bit disappointing there, but and we're ready.
Well, we show folks what happened a couple of days ago, actually on Monday afternoon at 4:15. Now, we at first thought it might have been a blown engine. We found out yesterday from Paul that it was simply a fitting on the engine that had broken, and unfortunately it wasn't a motor problem. With that impact, you were able to come back in today and look at some of the G meters, and just to show people how safe these cars really are, what kind of G-force were we talking about when you hit the wall?
When we hit the wall, when the back end hit first, it was 80 Gs straight back into the wall, which...
And some find the going tough. Even veterans are pushing the envelope and leaving their mark on the speedway concrete. Just within the past hour, the doctor left his calling card. 120 minutes of practice left, and you'll see it all live next.
An NHL
team was entering
turn number 2, and this is what happened.
We can see the back end just jumps out from underneath him, and it swaps end.
And fortunately, he didn't hit the outside wall that hard. But again, the back end,
these guys have been working on taking the push out of these cars, and they do that very slowly, and finally when they get the push all out, sometimes on the exit of the corner, the back end will step out.
Let's go to Jackaroo.
Tom, I think they call that a moment, at least in Ronnie Johncock's mind. That was a big moment when the car got way loose.
Yeah, you know, it really was. We've been working all day to try to find... Take to the track. Not really much to
analyze. I think basically he just turned in a little too hard. You don't see anything wrong with the car, but he hit tremendously hard here with the left side of the car, and you know, he's
He's quite short. He's very light. He's way down in the cockpit, which is good for him because there it really illustrates the impact.
You see how hard he hits there. And again, you guess a little bit, Ari. I mean, you know what the track's going to be like in the morning and yesterday, but you always think, boy, if I got a little understeer, how far do I go? Do I add a couple pounds to the right rear, put a little more front wing in it? They obviously went too far because that car was loose, and Jimmy drove it in hard, and before he knew it, the back end had stepped out on him.
We don't know. Maybe this morning he said, well, I've got a little bit of push. Let's put a half a turn of front wing in, and that little bit of wing can just be the difference because maybe this set of tires has more stagger in the right rear, or there's all kinds of reasons for this to happen.
But they're little adjustments. I mean, at 220 miles an hour, you just can't afford very big mistakes, and small changes lead to big results.
Very hard side impact by Jimmy Kite, but he did get out of the car under his own power and apparently is okay. Same thing cannot be said for the race car, however. Job of avoiding, and McGee also did a nice job of saving it.
And those were two Treadway cars right there almost together, so that was a good outcome.
And this is Andy Hillenberg up in turn 4, who slid from the warm-up lane right into the outside wall, putting the Sumar special into the garage area for some repairs on the right front. Jerry Punch is with Scott Sharp.
And earlier in the week, Scott Sharp.
He came out of
turn number 4. There's the short chute. Now entering turn number 4 and right here.
Well, the back end just steps out. You know, just not enough temperature yet. He doesn't hit hard on the outside, but boy, that impact to the left front on the inside wall. It looked like he maybe could have just saved that, and he probably thought he did. He probably thought he was going to maybe get away with this.
Yeah, there's just only one explanation for it, that he got on it too hard. He was just going too fast for the temperatures in the tires. And, you know, he was coming down to get the green flag, and I don't know what to say on that one. It just didn't work.
Well, it's that fine line between warming up as fast as you can, getting up to speed as fast as you can, but also get the temperatures up to the point where you get some traction.
Like Scott Sharp said, threading the needle, and it looked like he pinched it down a little bit coming off before. That could have attributed to this as well.
He does. He hits the outside wall, not hard, but now if he just had the steering wheel turned back to the right, but he didn't. He had it turned to the left, and when it finally caught traction, it just jumped it to the inside.
Scott is okay, and that is the good news.
It's not there.
Yeah. Well, you can see her moving around. That's the good news, but there was heavy impact. Again, this is a tough joint. I mean, it looks easy. It looks like these guys are just driving around in circles out there, but you just don't understand how close they are to the ragged edge every corner.
Mm-hmm. There's so much that goes on that you cannot see just by looking at the screen on television.
And Lynn is climbing out.
Yeah, she looks to be all right, so that's great. Boy, these cars have certainly held up really well today. Everybody that has had a crash today has had a pretty big one. There's been quite a couple of big impacts, like Matsuda and now Lynn, and certainly these cars are very safe right now.
Well, she's a little bit on her tiptoes, so she's going to feel it even more tomorrow, I'll guarantee you.
Here it is. It happened as she was exiting corner 1.
That is heavy impact. How about the guy in the infield? I don't know if you noticed. I mean, that is heavy impact. That's about as late in the corner as anybody's got loose. Everybody else has gotten looser and closer to the apex.
She actually pushed out.
Put his car on the pole, the provisional pole, on pole day for the 84th running of the Indianapolis 500.
This will be the last time out of turn 4, and he's probably going to punch down a little bit in the cockpit to just get less resistance down that straightaway. And he's on the pole, 2:23.372.
That is the average for 4 laps for Colombian Juan Montoya, 2:23.372.
Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and here he is entering turn 1 in the bobble right there, and couldn't save it.
Wow, I'll tell you, he was real lucky because he turned that thing right, and when at that point in the racetrack, when you correct for that, if it grabs hard, it could have shot him nose first in. Fortunately, he got it in backwards, and no injuries, but that thing had a serious wiggle getting into the corner.
Gidley, a teammate of Billy Boat on Team Pelfrey this year, and they have got a lot of work to do repairing that car.
Now watch him. He gets in a little tight. He's underneath the line, but the thing really wiggles. Watch the back end step out. He tries to correct. He turns right. Now that's not, a lot of times when you turn it right, it'll shoot you nose first back in. But fortunately that he realized it and kept himself from going in nose first. Again, he's pretty low. You can see how low he is on the racetrack. That's pinching it a little bit, and that if the car's on the edge, he might have just pinched that thing just a little bit too tight getting in.
Jack Arute is standing by with the car owner, whose drivers currently are 1st and 5th in the line. 13.815.
You think that got their attention, Ari?
And the car here almost goes over, but doesn't, and then slides up the racetrack, and another.
Well, that's pretty good impact the second or third time, so that's a tough deal. I'm surprised she got out of that thing, and she was a little ginger. She did tiptoe away at first, but she had a smile on her face.
Down to Jerry Punch.
Well, I'm actually sitting by here with Jacques and Angelique Lazier. And before we talk about your situation, when you see the situation like it happens to Lynn a moment ago, it just reinforces to you how
doing a Sullivan.
I mean, this is unbelievable that he doesn't hit anything right. I mean, he was at speed. This is not a warm-up situation. He's at speed and accidentally misses everything, Art.
Wow.
Let's go to
turn one, and
you know, it's hard to put a finger on that. They've changed the configuration here with the grandstands and stuff, so maybe the air flows through the turn one area a little bit different than it used to, but it's the turn that's presented all the problems for these drivers.
Jack Arute.
Well, Bob and Tom, a lot of the drivers are actually telling us the problem is.
You can see is out of the car and taking off the helmet. It appears to be okay. Let's see if we can analyze what happened.
Well, again, right in the middle of the corner, the car just gets loose. It gives a little wiggle, and then he's just a passenger from that point. But they backed into almost the identical spot time and time again this weekend. Again, the car just jumps loose. And what's really amazing to me is it's not giving these drivers much warning. You talk to every driver after these crashes, and they keep saying, boy, they didn't feel anything coming. It just all of a sudden, and this is probably the worst feel a driver can have, is when everything feels fine, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, it's backwards, and things happen fast. You're lucky if you get your eyes shut before you hit the wall.
Billy Boat finished 3rd last year and won the pole in 1998, but things have gone sour for him here on the 2nd day of qualifying for this year's Indianapolis 500.
And again, these drivers just are not feeling that, you know, especially when the car's loose. The driver doesn't feel it as quick. That's why you usually try to start with an understeer and work the understeer out very slowly until you get to that neutral steer situation that you need to go fast. But this thing is just not giving the drivers much warning.
This is a Team Pelfrey car, and they qualified one yesterday with, but I don't know whether this is going to be a evident damage
on the car. This is the car that Tony Stewart and Larry Curry own. Well, we understand now that it was an engine problem on Jared Schrader's car. It has brought out the caution once again and stopped the practice for the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
The second lap.
Kind of rips that thing off. It's got a couple of flat tires. Well, again, it's getting to, like we talked about, it's crunch time. It's getting down to the last couple hours, and these guys get in a hurry. They just left after qualifying. They opened up for practice, and again, maybe a little anxious, wanting to get out there and get a feel for what the car's doing, and trying to get up to speed maybe a little too quick.
That is down in the turn 2 area, and while we search for some replays here, up to look back, Doug Dodaro. Here he is, and again, turn number 1.
Oh, boy,
and a wiggle.
Got it way low.
Yep.
Yeah, it got the death wiggle.
Turned in way too low on the racetrack, and I don't think he was even up to speed, guys, because otherwise he would have hit something. He just...
He couldn't have been at speed because he pinched it pretty good, but it wiggled down getting into the corner. And again, these guys are trying to free him up. They're trying to take...
Who yesterday qualified for the 500, with an average of 221.508, good enough the middle of the third row, but there is considerable damage on the right side of that machine.
Well, that's a tough deal. I mean, Stan did a tremendous job yesterday. Surprised a lot of people with the time that he set down and how well he qualified. So, again, we'll have to see the replay to see what happened, but he looks like he's fine. He's talking to the safety workers, and, you know, he's got to be a little disappointed, obviously, but we'll have to wait and see if we can figure out what happened.
But I guess it's better if you're going to crash to do it today rather than on Thursday, because they have all week now to get the car repaired for Thursday in Carburation Day.
Yeah, that's the advantage of trying your race setups on this day, this Sunday, the day after pole day.
So Stan Waddles crashes here at Indianapolis, but he is okay. And we do have about 2 hours, and now this is through turn 1, and here he whitewalls.
Yeah, that's an understeer. He just pushed. Instead of the back end jumping loose, he lost the front end and went up and tagged the wall with the right rear. Obviously, that could have deflated the tire or did something to the rear suspension, caused a toe-in problem or whatever, and he didn't get her slowed down quick enough to...
It amazes me, like the same thing happened to Jack Miller a couple of days ago, and, you know, as soon as they came off of the first...
And later tonight also, Hideshi Matsuda has crashed here at Indianapolis. And this would be the third time that he has crashed here. And Tice Carlson was also involved in a crash with this team. And so it's not been a very pleasant month of May for the Hubbard Emke team.
Well, you look at these skid marks, that's real early in the corner, like something maybe in the right front broke or caused the car just to go, you know, straight in. This is not a good angle to go into the wall at. And,
that's a real bad angle as far as injury is concerned, and probably went in really, really hard as well.
Let's take a look at it on slow motion. It's up in turn number 3.
Well, again, it's a lot like we've seen in 1. The car just jumps loose and backs into the wall extremely hard.
And a bit of fire there in the engine compartment as well.
Well, that's usually oil coming out of either the motor. I mean, you hit the wall hard enough, it could have broke the block in half. But something caused that car to just snap backwards fairly early in the corner, and it's turn 3, not turn 1.
Jerry Punch is with...
We went out, and it may have been a factor. It's hard to say at this point.
All right, Greg, we know you're more concerned about your driver. We'll let you head back that way. Thanks for stopping.
All right, thank you.
Greg Beck, the team manager for Hubbard Emke, as Hideshi has been taken out of the car and placed on the stretcher, guys.
Well, they've got him on the stretcher, obviously, but you can see the right side of the car is pancaked pretty well. I mean, that car went hard.
Yeah, that was tremendous impact, and let's hope he's okay. But that looks like the hardest impact we've seen all month. The angle of how you hit the wall is real critical to what you can go through as far as physically. And we saw Jimmy Kite pancake the wall yesterday, but he was further down into the turn already. Hideshi lost it earlier than anybody has lost it going into turn 1, and therefore just ended up, you know, earlier out on the outside wall.
Well, the closer you are to 90 degrees, the more energy the driver absorbs, and that's the tough situation.
We'll get a report on Hideshi's condition just as soon as it becomes available. Just as soon as we possibly can, but the car is severely damaged on the left side. Let's take a look at the rows as they stand.
He was brought in here. He's awake and alert. He's complaining of some pain in his right wrist and his left leg. We're going to send him down to get some x-rays and probably get a CT scan since he hit pretty hard.
Okay, but other than that, he seems to be fine.
On the racetrack.
Well, that's a good news. It wasn't a spin or anything, but bad news for Donnie.
Crashed here at Indianapolis. But we see the elation and the emotion from Andy Hillenberg, and now a different kind of emotion from David Dodaro as he realizes his cousin Doug has crashed again.
And this is the end for him. It's you go from one side of emotion to the other, and this is bubble day.
A lot of things happen at Indianapolis.
We'll show you a replay when we come back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Get out of the car, by the way.
Well, again, turn 1, the car just jumps loose on him, and we've seen this, I don't know how many times this week, but the car gets loose in turn 1, back it into the wall on the exit, and, you know, the end of the day and possibly the month for Darrell.
So many guys are trying to trim out these cars to get more straight line speed, but they suffer in the turns, and especially in turn 1.
Well,
you know, something must have happened in turn 1 between now and last year, because last year we didn't hardly see these incidents.
Yeah, it's hard to say what's changed, but something's changed, and you know, you'd sort of like to be down there and trying to help out some of these guys and just tell them, hey, put the downforce back in the car. If you can hold the pedal wide open, you're going to go a lot faster than trying to drive it through turn 1, because these guys aren't making it through turn 1.
Yeah.
Good move on
Drynen's part to pull in to allow Billy Boat a final opportunity to make the Indy 500 field. Well, right now, as it stands, the front row, which we determined yesterday, Greg Ray, Juan Montoya, and Eliseo Salazar. And by the way, Boat is in Salazar's backup car. Gordon, Sharp, and Ward are in row number 2. The third row, Vassar, Waddles, and Buell. Cheever, Dismore, and McGee in the 4th row. Row number 5, Scott Goodyear, Sam Hornish, Donnie Beechler. The 6th row, Lazier, Leffler, and Allenzer Jr. Row number 7, Fisher, Gregoire, and Dare. Calkins, Hearn, and Boycell in the 8th row. Row number 9, Jimmy Kite, Jacques Lazier, and Steve Knapp. The 10th row, Hamilton, Schrader, and Johnny Unser. And in the 11th row right now is Lynn St. James, Andy Hillenberg, and Dr. Jack Miller. Miller is the slowest. That is the speed that Billy Boat is shooting for, 216.1. It is after 6 o'clock Indianapolis time, 7 o'clock Eastern time. And Billy Boat comes out of turn number 4 and looks for the white flag one more time around.
Well, how about the emotion out of Foyt? Here's a guy that's done it all. He's won the race 4 times. He's here as an owner. He's got a car in the front row, and for the competitor that he is, he's choked up at the emotion at the end of qualifying for this year's race.
Third lap to 18.691. He has dropped down every lap, but he still is fast enough to get into the starting lineup for the 500-mile race.
I think AJ is emotional just because he never really expected this, they could pull this off at the last moment. I mean, we heard him say like 22 minutes ago, get the other car.
Yeah, I thought he would have been a little more prepared for that, or have that thing sitting out here. You wouldn't think he would have still had it in the garage.
They pulled it in the line, and then they put it together.
Checkered flag drops, and Billy Boat's last lap is good enough. He is in 217.507, an average of 218.872.
AJ.
This is the car that Tice Carlson crashed earlier this week. And it is the same car that Hideshi crashed yesterday.
Again, it's cold out. You know, it's getting cooler as the day goes on, and you know, it didn't take him. It wasn't much time from the time he left the pits till this happened, Ari.
He must have hit really hard, because for a moment there I couldn't really distinguish what I was seeing. The side or the back, or what side of the car?
Well, he's climbing out.
Yeah,
wow.
That's great.
That's the good news.
He was sitting still, and of course,
it looked pretty quiet in the cockpit for a while. So.
Well, you can see the damage. I mean, it's knocked 3 of the wheels completely limp on the thing. So
sure is good to see him climb out of that thing and walk around and assess the damage. But he did tear it up. Let's see what happened here.
Coming into one.
Again, you see the wiggle. I mean, a big wiggle, heavy, compact.
Jeez. That was the first time he entered turn 1 and entered it too quick.
Well, that was heavy contact. Fortunately, it got in backwards. I mean, that's a lot better than going in frontwards on these things.
And he walks into the ambulance, Doc, and that's the good news.
Well, that's the great news, but it has not been a good week for Hubbard MQ Racing. We mentioned this is the car that Tyrus Carlson crashed early in the week, sustained a concussion, and was not cleared to drive. And then, of course, the same car that was crashed yesterday in the afternoon. And Greg Beck told me that they had to replace the left front suspension, the left airbox, side pod underwing, and the tub had a big split in it. They sent the tub out last night at 8:30 over to Aerodyne Composites. It came back at 3:30 this morning, and as they were pulling back into the racetrack with the tub on a tow truck, the tow truck driver, one of their crew members, was hit head-on coming into the racetrack. And, of course, that's the kind of luck they've had the last couple of days. The crew member is okay. The tub was scratched up. They fixed the car, and now, for the third time in less than a week, they're going to have to try to fix it again.
They might have to send it out to Waste Management or BFI, that tub, tonight. There ain't much left of that thing.
There's Tice Carlson, who was in the car.
If we don't get a whole lot of rain, you're probably looking at about 2 hours and 15 minutes to dry it once it stops.
Now, for a race to be official, how far does it have to go?
We have to make it to lap 101 for an official event.
So that's a little bit more than halfway. Now, at what point will you say everybody can go home and we'll try it again tomorrow?
Well, I don't think we'd ever want to start this race without having the full intention and time allotted to run full distance. So if we don't go green by 3:45, I would anticipate at that point in time we would cancel it and run tomorrow.
Okay, so now you're talking about 5 hours and 20 minutes from now, and that would give you enough time and enough daylight to finish 500 miles?
Right, yeah, I would hate to cheat the participants or the fans out of something less than that if there's anything we can do about it.
Brian, what would happen if you start the race and then you have to stop it and you don't get to the halfway point and you can't continue? What happens then?
If we have started the event and we're short of the halfway point, if we have to red flag, we would then just postpone and pick up tomorrow or the first clear day with the next lap in sequence.
Okay. Well, we appreciate it, sir. Well, I'm sure we will be checking back with you shortly. Well, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Al.
Okay, that's Brian Barnhart. And now you're up to date in terms of the weather as we take a look at one Robbie Gordon, one of the top drivers on this circuit. Heartbreak last year. He came within 3 miles of winning the Indianapolis 500. And welcome back as ABC Sports brings you the greatest spectacle in racing, the 84th Indianapolis 500.